Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you so much for being here. I sincerely appreciate every single one of you. I am super excited because today I have a Christmas compilation for our Christmas in July, and I hope that you'll enjoy all of these projects. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting.
DIY number one.
This is my inspiration picture. It was something that I saw on Pinterest. I thought it was really pretty. So I have these slices of wood from a tree that we cut down. My brother had sliced them up for me. And then this is a leftover Dollar Tree wreath form that I'd already pulled out the middle ring from. I tried to pull it apart and it was pretty solid, so I ended up just having to clip out all of those little connectors. So I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to sit on there, and I used a chenille stem and just wrapped that around and around. I used a dark green because I figured that would blend in with my greenery. So once I had all three rings set, I went ahead and grabbed these garland ties from the Dollar Tree. I believe they come in a set of 10, it might be 12. And I bent them in half, as you saw, and I just started wrapping them around the rings, the hoops. So at the base, I was doing it around all three hoops, and I just kept kind of tying them on there and setting it up to see how it was looking and try to gauge trying to gauge how many of these I needed to have on there. And as I started working my way up and around the hoops, I went from wrapping them around all three hoops to wrapping them around just the two hoops, and then eventually just around that outer hoop. And I just kept working it until I made it about halfway around, a little more than halfway around the hoop as far as where the branches landed. So I just kept checking my inspiration picture and kind of kept going until I had it about where I wanted it there. So fluffed it all up a little bit, and then I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to anchor it. So I did use my staple gun, and those were, I think they're 1/2-inch staples. They are whatever the longest staple is that you can get for these little staple guns. So I did that, and then I used a generous amount of hot glue just so that it could get down in there and make its way into the wood as well. So now I am taking fairy lights, and I had shared these with you a few videos back, I think, but I do have them in my Amazon store, and there's a link in my description box for these if you have interest. So the link is to my Amazon storefront, and these are in the storefront. So I just wrapped them around and around on each of the hoops, and I did turn them on just so I could see where they were and how I was positioning them, and I thought it also might make it a little bit easier for you to see what I was doing. Once I got up to the top, I did kind of jump from that top hoop into the middle hoop, but in a place where the greenery would camouflage that. And then I worked my way back down. Once I ran out of length, I ended up using 2 sets of the fairy lights. These are wire basically. So as I'm wrapping them, they are kind of staying put, right? So it's like little lights on wire. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I ran out of the one, I just secured it down by wrapping it around, and it stayed put. And then I started with a new strand. So worked my way all the way back down. So I've got it around all 3 hoops, and then I tucked it under the greenery. And I did not glue down those little on-off switches, by the way, because I want to be able to access them and replace the batteries if and when needed. Excuse me. So now I'm ripping apart one of my little picks. As you know, I'm always pulling these things apart and putting some little poinsettias in here. There's a pine cone, some berries, and you can decorate these however you want. I'm going to be adding some of those little Dollar Tree bulbs. These are all Dollar Tree materials except for the fairy lights and that wood slab that's from my backyard. So I'm just positioning everything where it makes my heart happy. So gluing down the bulbs, and then I'm going to drop a little red one in there as well. And that's it, you guys. I love this, and I hope you like it too.
DIY number 2.
So for this project, I have a wood round. It was part of a pack of, I believe it was 3 from the Hobby Lobby. I've had it for a while. And I gave that a coat of my white paint, and then my little Farm Fresh cutout. That's from the Dollar Tree. It was a pack of like 6 different ones, and I gave that a red coat. And then I decided that I didn't want the white super white, so I used a little tiny bit of antique wax by Waverly, and I'm going over this with a baby wipe. Once it was dry, I secured my little Farm Fresh sign with hot glue, and then I grabbed some tumbling tower blocks, and I was thinking that these would make good tree trunks. Eventually, I did swap that out, but for the time being, I'm just trying to decide how I want to form my little branches for my evergreen trees. So I'm just giving them a little haircut because sometimes these little evergreen ties look better when they are just like trimmed up. So this is where I decided that I didn't really like the tree trunks. So I grabbed some skewers. These are also from the Dollar Tree. And I cut them down. I cut them, 3 of them, the same length. And once I had those all cut, I went over them with the antique wax too, and I made them nice and brown so that they would stand out against that backdrop. So I got all of my little branches ready, and I've got them kind of prepared on my sign the way I want them all lined up, just trying to figure out how they're going to be positioned here. So once I had them pretty much the way I wanted them, I went ahead and blowing away all the little extra the haircut remnants. And I am hot gluing down my little tree trunks, and then I'm going to come back with my branches and secure those as well. So just a little drop of glue right on the skewer where I want to place my branch, and I am just gluing all those down. And I did that with all 3 of the trees. And I did offset that middle one. So each of the bottoms of those trunks are about the same distance from the edge of the circle. So it just makes them look like they're different heights. And then I decided I wanted to distress it a little bit with some more white paint on the red. And then I decided I also wanted to make my little trees look a little bit flocked and snowy. So I just went over them with a very dry brush and gave them a little bit of white. And that's it. And I love this one too. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 3.
So for this project, I found these adorable little shoe things, boot things, booties at the Dollar Tree. They're nice and stiff. And then I've got this Dollar Tree hat that I'm going to take apart. I was actually impressed with how well it was made. It was lined with fleece. So I got all of that out, undid the seams, and then I basically had this tube of knit material. And so I'm just trying to figure out how I want to use it. And I ended up cutting it about in half, and I'm going to use the one part for the body. And at first I figured I would just seal it up like a tube. I did end up, after I sealed this, wanting to go back and kind of adjust the shape of it a little bit. You do want to make sure that you're using your finger protectors for the hot glue because, yeah. So that part where it had the notch in the top, I went ahead and cut that in half, and then the one half I cut in half again, and I'm going to make the little arms and mittens. Now, when I cut this, I was thinking, you know, I needed a notch for the little thumb area. If I had it to do again, I would just make a slit, because when you use the hot glue on it, it's going to make that notch more pronounced, and it almost ended up looking a little bit more like a claw than a mitten. But you know, you can learn from my mistakes. So I'm now turning this other body piece, if you will, inside out, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm kind of working, as things dry, I flip other things inside out, or not dry, but cool, you know what I mean? But here I am trimming it again because I decided that, and this is the end that I had glued. I didn't like the shape of it, so I'm just going to glue the parts that I just kind of cut and get that sealed back up again. So then I'm going to fold it in half, and I decided I was going to cut the other end as well. So just making it more of a round shape. So that last piece that I had left, I'm going to glue that to create his hat. So hopefully this is all making sense. I think it's going to make a little bit more sense as I am putting our little friend together here, but sealing everything up with the hot glue and then flipping it right side out so that I have my seams. So here I'm using some Dollar Tree little glass gems for the bottom, and this is just going to help stand our little guy up. At first, I thought I might have the legs coming out from his sitting position. Ultimately, I did have him standing, but that was why I went ahead and put the glass beads in here to begin with. If you are going to make him stand up, you probably don't need the glass beads in this section, but that's what I did. And then I was just kind of helping the shape a little bit more as I was stuffing it. So once I had it all stuffed, I went ahead and grabbed a rubber band, and I'm using that to secure the top there. And then once I have that all nice and secure, I'm gonna kind of check and make sure that his little hat is gonna fit here. So I'm flipping the hat right side out. And you know what? If you have a sewing machine and you'd like to use your sewing machine for these projects, you absolutely can. I'm still working on getting the tension fixed on my sewing machine, and so I'm using the hot glue. But then I'm going to go ahead and stuff his little mittens and his arms. And then I had sealed up the little end there, and I'm going to attach it with a generous amount of hot glue to the top of his shoulder, so to speak. So I did that on both sides, sealed that up, and then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm also going to seal it with some generous amounts of hot glue to the side of our little friend here. So then I'm going to stuff his little hat, and just going to make sure that it looks like it's going to fit on there. I did add some more stuffing to it, and then I want to make sure that I'm doing his beard. So I was struggling with that a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that it was nice and full. So I'm using one of these Dollar Tree dust mop things, and every time I cut one of these, I find that it tends to fray super easily. So I decided I was going to try something. I'm basically kind of pulling all of the little strands apart. I'm creating not a hem, a part. There we go. I'm going to use my hot glue here, and I'm going to just try to see if creating a line of hot glue, I'm going to do a double line, and then I'm going to cut down kind of in between my lines of hot glue. I'm hoping that this is going to keep this dust cloth from fraying. While I'm waiting for the hot glue to cool, I'm using one of my Arteza markers on a ping pong ball. It's like a flesh tone, creating a nose. So now I'm coming back, and I am struggling a little bit with the hot glue, but I am cutting through it, trying to go down between the two lines I made. It pulled away a little bit of the strands here, but after that, it really was, it worked. So highly recommend doing that if you are trying to work with this stuff and want to keep it from fraying. So I secured it to my little, I'm going to call him a gnome, and then I'm going to put his hat on. And I'm going to work from the back forward. So I'm flipped up the end of his hat, and I'm not worried about the frayed edge because I'm going to be doing something in a little bit to finish that off and make it look nice and finished. So don't worry about the frayed edge there. But I'm working my way around with the hot glue and just getting it up underneath his little cap to make sure it's secured to his head. And then as I get around to the front, I'm going to go ahead and tuck in his nose and make sure that that's all nice and secured as well. And you just want to be careful with the hot glue with the ping pong ball because it will pop the ball. So just don't want to be pressing too hard on it because it'll just crush the ball and you won't really have a round nose anymore. So now I'm taking these little white pom-poms because I didn't really have anything else in my stash for this. You could use probably cotton. You might even be able to use something like batting. I'm not sure. I had these little white pom-poms, so that is what I am using to trim out his little hat. Again, just be real careful with the hot glue. So I found for me personally, if I put a little bit of hot glue on each little ball, I was able to position it the way that I wanted. But again, just be careful because I did end up burning myself. I probably should have used my finger protectors. But when I was placing one of these little balls down, I kind of wasn't paying enough attention to where I'd placed the hot glue and I got my finger in it. So once I had it around his little hat, I went in and I did a round around his wrists to create little cuffs or for his sleeves. And I am going to go in later and do another round, but for right now, I decided I want to put his little shoes on. So I'm using more of these glass beads. I just wanted to help make it bottom heavy. And I'm positioning him on here and he's standing up on this without any problem. So I'm going to come in and I'm giving copious amounts of hot glue, just being real generous with the hot glue. And I'm going to set him right down on top of there and let that hot glue cool. I'm just kind of messing with his shape again. So now I have this black felt and it's adhesive felt that I'd gotten from Arteza. I'm cutting 2 strips because it wasn't quite long enough to go around his middle. I'm making him a belt. So you can see I've got him laying face down right now. I'm gonna wrap the belt around. I had it start in the middle of his back and then I'm gonna trim it off in the front. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see there. And then I'm gonna line up the other piece at the back. So butted those right up against each other. I'm going to do the same thing at the front, butting them up against each other. And I've got these cute little snowflake stickers and I made one his little belt buckle. And then I decided I wanted to fancy up his little hat with some of these snowflakes as well. So just adding snowflakes in whichever way was making my heart happy, just kind of random. And here he is, our little Santa friend. I love him. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 4.
So do you guys remember this project from a few months ago? We are going to redecorate. Now, we are going to make this for the holidays. You could totally use the little Santa gnome that we did a couple of weeks ago, but I am going to do something different. I bet you can't guess. If you have followed me for any bit of time, you know I love snowmen. So I'm going to make a snowman. I've got a bunch of that little round is like a remnant from some other thing that I pulled apart from the Dollar Tree. I've got a few different sized ornaments. I think one of them might be from Michael's and then the other 2 are from the Dollar Tree. And I'm using my little, this is a wood burning tool. I have yet to use it actually on wood. I usually am melting plastic with it. So I'm cutting out holes in my ornaments and this is to help them lay flat. So the bottom one, I want to be able to sit flat on the base and then I want them each to be able to stack nicely and sit one on top of the other. So that's why I did that. So you can see here that they stack just nicely. So there we go. So once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue my 3 ornaments together. I'm not going to adhere them to the base just yet. I want to make sure that I've got them all set and painted and all of that before that happens. So just using a really good amount of glue and getting my snowman together. And then I came in with paint. And I did kind of like pat it to kind of, make it a mess right now, but to give it a little bit of a snowy effect and a texture to the paint. So a couple of these already had a little bit of texture because of the glitter on them, but hopefully you get what I mean. So now I'm going to go ahead once it's dry and apply it to its base. And then I'm going to decorate him. So I'm using one of my Arteza paint markers to kind of get my little orange nose ready, and I'm going to trim that off. I did blunt the tip of that so it's not super pointy, but making his little carrot nose. And I'm going to do just a teeny tiny little dab of paint on there, or paint, hot glue, so I could stick it to his face. Now, these little branches are from my stash. They came from a twig broom that I've been using for projects. It was one that I'd gotten at the grocery store. It smelled like cinnamon. I don't know. I've been making all kinds of stuff with it for like a year now. So I went ahead and cut those down, applied his little arms, and now I am using black adhesive felt to make his eyes, to make his mouth, and to make his little buttons. And I'm just going to kind of speed through this because I'm sure you all know exactly how to do this. So I just cut them all by hand. No, template or anything like that, but just got him all dolled up. And then I went to my stash and I pulled out, this is a Keurig cup. So this is my trash to treasure part of the project. But I kind of bent that little hole back out again so it was hidden, painted it black with my chalk paint. I had these tiny little red berries that I set down there on my craft table. And now I am cutting out some holly leaf shapes. You can totally draw on the back of the felt and then cut out your drawing. I just kind of winged it. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply these to his little hat so he is all handsome and adorned. So getting the little holly leaves on there, and then I'll add the berries right there in the middle. And this was like a double set of berries. It was like 6 total. So I put a little glue on the 3 and I was holding on to the others so I didn't burn myself. And then I just pulled them away. So once his hat is all done, I'm going to apply some hot glue to the inner rim and putting that on his little head. And then I went and grabbed this ribbon from my stash. This is one of my Kirkland ribbons, and I thought it was really cool because it goes from like a dark cranberry color and fades kind of rainbowish, but it goes from that dark cranberry all the way down to green. And I just thought it was a really pretty little ribbon that I could create a scarf with. So it is a wired ribbon, so you can see it's kind of giving it some shape. Maybe it's fluttering in the wind, I don't know. But I just tied that around his neck, and then I evened up the ends. And sometimes I find it really hard to cut these ribbons. They want to like slide away from my scissors. I don't know why that is, but then I just kind of like frayed up the ends a little bit. So now I am taking some more of these garland ties. I'm taking one and just creating a circle, bending it all around itself so that it remains in a hoop. And I am going to start doing the same thing that we did earlier around those other hoops, but this time we're going to make a full wreath. So just cutting these in half, then bending them to halves in half and wrapping them around our little circle. So I'm going to adorn this with some, I'm calling these mini poinsettias. I think there's another name for it, and I can't remember what it is. I got them at the Dollar Tree, but these little cute red flowers, I thought that they'd look really pretty on our wreath. So I'm just kind of piecing the leaves together with the flower buds and getting those all set on the wreath. Then I'm coming in with some Dollar Tree ribbon. This is a really pretty red satin ribbon, and it's got some gold running through it, and I just thought it was really pretty. So just creating loops, and then I'm going to create the little piece that makes the bow. I'm just basically tying a knot around it, and then I'll also use that piece that I just tied to attach it to the little mini wreath here. So tucking that through the garland ties and around the back, grabbing a hold of it and tying what was supposed to be a knot. It wasn't quite long enough to do a double knot, so I came in and I secured it with some hot glue. And then I just trimmed off the ends and put down a little extra glue just to make sure that it wasn't going to come undone. So now we have our wreath to adorn our lamppost. So there's our little snowman and our little wreath. So far, so good. We're going to add our snow. So I have this, I don't even know what this is called, but it's kind of like a snow blanket that you can use with little Christmas villages. And I am just taking a piece of it that I'd cut up and going to position it around my lamppost. I am not securing this because I do want to be able to switch out the decorations with this lamppost throughout the seasons. So let me know what you think.
DIY number 5.
So I am using my fern chalk paint on these Dollar Tree foam. I'm going to call them trees because I don't know what else they might be. I guess they could be Christmas or Christmas cones, ice cream cones. I don't know. It's the only other thing that I can think of. But I have this awesome wrap that my sweet subscriber Rose sent to me. She sent me a whole bunch of craft supplies. So thank you again, Rose, for your generosity. But I'm just going to wrap this first little tree with this, I'm going to call it bling wrap for lack of a better term. I decided I wanted to do some glam Christmas trees. I don't normally do glam. I do like bling every once in a while. So this is my blingy Christmas stuff. So once I had the base of this wrapped around, I went ahead and started trimming off some of the excess because this obviously does taper as it goes from the bottom up to the top, and so I wanted all of this to lay as flat as possible. So it was a little bit tedious, I'm not gonna lie, but I just kind of took my time with it, trimmed it up where I needed to, secured it with hot glue as I went so that it made sure that it was holding, and we made it work. So you can see all the little trimmings there on my table. Once I had both sides of that trimmed down, I went ahead and sealed up that seam. And then I decided I was going to cover the bottom half with another layer. And this I just overlapped in the middle. I made this one a little bit, I didn't take as much time with this one. I decided it was going to be okay if some of it was overlapping in the back. So I didn't cut off quite as much, and I was really okay with that. So if you, really want to have at it and make sure that the whole thing is just a little minimal seam down the back, you can certainly do that. But I trimmed off some of the excess along the bottom and just kind of made like a little bit of a jagged edge like you might expect with a tree anyway. And then I put a smaller piece up at the top, and that was that for that tree for right now. So our second tree, this is also from Rose. I am using these little pearls. They're so pretty. And I'm just gluing down the string on the strand of pearls to adhere to the top. And then also from Rose, these fun little crystals I am securing at the top. Trimmed it off. And I'm just going to wrap this string of beads of pearls, all the way around the tree as many times as it'll wrap. And then I'm securing it with some more glue at the bottom. So there's our second little tree. And the third tree, some more bling wrap. I thought this was gorgeous. I'm going to go ahead and do our third tree with some of this at the base. So I'm going to secure it just along the edge with the hot glue. Get that wrapped all the way around the bottom. And as you can see, the styrofoam kind of has like a crease in it. It's not really a crease, it's got an indent at the, so I'm using that as the back of each of my trees. So wherever I'm starting with my seams, I am starting at that kind of indenture at the back of the little trees. So just getting that all sealed down. And then I decided I was going to use this other blingy, I don't know what you would call this. It's almost like a little dainty bracelet kind of material, but it's all little crystals, and it's so pretty and shimmery. So I'm using this as you might a garland on your Christmas tree, and I am just draping it and just using a little tiny bit of glue at each of the little points where I want it to be draped. putting one of these crystals on top of this as well. I am going to be coming back to this. I had something in mind, but I was too excited to see how these would stand up. So I went ahead and took a skewer for each of these little trees and putting it in the center of the tree and just trying to see how they will look once I have them all standing. So back to that third tree, I've got this cute little, very, very thin ribbon. I want to say it's maybe 1/8 of an inch wide. It's super, super thin or narrow. And I'm creating little tie your shoelace bows. That's all these are. So it's just tying a little bow, clipping it off, tying a little bow and clipping it off. And then I'm securing them at each of the little peaks on our garland. So anywhere I glued the garland to the tree, that is where I fastened a little bow. And now I've got these, I think these are actually candle holders from the Dollar Tree, and I've got some Dollar Tree stone, and so I'm going to use these as our little pots for our Christmas trees. So I just put in a bunch of the stone and I worked the little skewer down into the stone, and that's just plenty sufficient to anchor the trees and hold them upright. So I did that with all three, and then I grabbed my Dollar Tree red ribbon again. This is the same ribbon that I used before, and I am going to wrap it around the little base of the tree planters, if you will, for 2 of them. And then the third one, I decided I wanted to wrap it around the middle where my little bling wrap overlaps on the center of that tree. So I'm just wrapping it. I'm hot gluing just the what would you call that? I want to say strand, but that's not quite what I mean. I'm at a loss for words right now, but you know what I mean. So I'm wrapping it, gluing it, just a single band. That's the word I was looking for. So just putting a red band around it. And then once that is secure on each of them, I do come back in and create a little bow that I then adhere. So here we go. Looping, looping. So it's basically just making kind of like an X with the 2 loops, right? And then taking a third piece and wrapping it around the middle and securing that with hot glue. So once I did that, I went ahead and secured it to each of the little seams on the bands. So those seams, those I put in the front of the little trees, right? And on the front of the planters, because that's where the bow is going to go. And then you don't see a seam at all because the bow is hiding it. And then I went ahead and I trimmed up all the ends, and they were all set and perky and ready to go. So let me know what you think of these too.
DIY number 6.
So this is from the Dollar Tree. It's a little sled that I picked up with some white Adirondack chalk paint. We are going to go ahead and give it a good coat. Once it is all dry, coming in with my Mod Podge, and I am going to give just at the top of this a really good coat. Now I have to give a big shout out to my new friend Deirdre at Our Upcycled Life. I will leave a link in my description box for her channel. You want to check her out. She is awesome. She has literally changed my crafting life with this neat hack because we are going to be taking care of this Mod Podge situation. And if you've ever watched me Mod Podge something like this and struggle with getting all of the edges finished, you are going to love this. So Deirdre, thank you so much. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am about this. So get rid of anything flammable, you guys. Have some water nearby and light it up. Look at how it goes right to the edge of what you've Mod Podged. Gets right rid of all of that napkin. I just think this is the coolest thing, and it is so satisfying. And so for those little middle pieces, we're just going to take a little knife and pierce it, and you can come right in with your little flame and take care of those little pieces too. Isn't that the neatest thing you've ever seen? I am like blown away. Thank you so much, Deirdre. Definitely check out Our Upcycled Life and tell Deirdre that I sent you. Please say hello. So once you have it all burned away, you just take another little paintbrush, brush off all of the little singed edges, and voila. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my little pull string back to the sled. And then I have this, what would you call this, garland? I'm not sure what I would call this, but it's a wired garland, for lack of a better term, that I actually took off of a Valentine's Day project last Valentine's Day, and I used the base from the Dollar Tree. But I had formed it into a little bow, and I twisted it in the middle a couple of times to secure it. And now I'm coming in with some greenery and some little berry picks that I had left over. It's a piece of a pick, basically. Y'all know I like to tear my picks apart, but I always keep the little pieces because you never know when you might have a mini to make that's going to use it, right? So I am just cutting out my little pieces, and then I'll go ahead with my hot glue and get them glued into place. So just layering them on here. And I do apologize if you hear snoring in the background, bless his heart. I'm recording this, it's like 10 minutes to midnight, you guys, and he's such a sweetheart. He's here on the couch and he's kind of out cold because he had a really long day, but he's keeping me company. So I apologize if you can hear him sleeping next to me. That is what that noise is. But at any rate, I've got my little silver fun ribbon here from the Dollar Tree that I'm adding on top. I had just done a little tie your shoelace bow, and I decided it was too perfect. So I'm coming in with some of my antique wax. Had I to do over again, that did not sound right, but as I mentioned, it's like almost midnight, so please forgive me. But if I had it to do over again, that's what I meant. I probably would have done the antique wax before I did the Mod Podge. It just would have been a little bit easier before I put all the embellishments on, but it worked out. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 7.
So does this little guy look familiar? I made him back in Christmas in July. I'll leave a link in the description box in case you didn't get to see me make him. But my sister figured out how to make a cartoon out of him. So we took a picture and this is what she created. I was so excited. So I printed it out on water slide paper from Hippo, and I'm sealing it up with the matte acrylic spray that I showed you. When you do this, you want to make sure that you do it 3 times and let it dry in between. And now I'm cutting it down. I do have a complete video on water slide and how it actually works. So I'm rushing through this a little bit, but we'll leave a link for that video as well in case you want all of the details on how to do this. But it's super easy and you can print pretty much anything off of an inkjet printer and create your own decals. So I've slid it off onto my little white Dollar Tree mug, and I'm using my paper towel to kind of squeegee all of the water out. Keep in mind this is sped up about 3 times, so I am being pretty gentle and just going slow in trying to get that water out so that I don't damage my decal. So once I have it all in place, and you can see you can adjust it, so now I'm kind of holding it down in the middle so that even as I'm gently wiping it, I don't want it to slide, I want it to stay put. So if you like this little guy as much as I do, I'm excited to tell you that he is available in my Etsy shop as a digital download, so a printable, as well as on t-shirts and mugs. So if you don't want to create your own, it's out there for you and available. So I hope that you'll check that out. There is a link in my description box.
DIY number 8.
This is my inspiration picture for the next DIY. I'm doing things backwards. We're going to do the fall project at the end. So we're kind of, yeah, I flipped things around, but I am showing you all of the supplies we're going to be using here. So I have some pallet wood that I've had out in my garage. I had drilled some holes in the top of it. I eyeballed those holes, you guys, but then I set the boards together when I drilled them, so I made sure that they were exactly the same. They were about, if I had to guess, about a half inch in and a half inch down for the corner holes, and then that center hole was maybe about 2 inches lower than my corner holes. So just cleaning them all up with my Dollar Tree sand block, making sure that all of the rough edges are taken care of. I'm going to give it a good coat of paint with my silver lining chalk paint. Once that is all dry, I have these little drawer pulls I had shown you before. I got these off of Amazon. They should be in my Amazon shop, and the link for that is in the description box. Went ahead and fastened those onto that center hole, and now I'm using some jute cord from Walmart to go ahead and fasten around the necks of my ball jars. I also got these from Walmart in a pack. I think it was like 12 to the pack, and I forget how much they were, but they were not all that expensive. I got them several months ago now, so I don't recall the exact price, but I am just tying that around the neck, cutting off a length that I can now tie back around. I had created a little bit of a slip knot on that first tie so that I could open up, like loosen the strand that was around the neck so that I could get my other piece in there to tie it off. I hope I'm making sense. It's late at night when I'm doing this, so I'm feeling a little brain dead. But I went ahead and I did the same thing to the other side, being mindful of the length so that I made sure that they were a matched set, right? I didn't want one hanging lower, noticeably lower than the other. So now I'm going ahead and I'm threading the jute cord through here. I was having a little bit of a hard time, especially since the paint inside the little holes there was still a little bit wet. So I'm using a skewer, and you'll be able to see better in a second what I did. But I basically started the jute cord through. So right here, I'm kind of twisting it and pushing it through, and then I'm using the skewer to help get it through the hole a little bit more, and then I'm pulling it through on the other side. So once I had it through, I was able to go ahead and knot it off. Once it was knotted, I pulled it tight to make sure that my knot wasn't going to go slipping back through the hole, and then I went ahead and trimmed my ends off, and then I did the same exact thing on the other sconce. So once I had that done, I went ahead and grabbed out my little fairy lights. I got these on Amazon recently. It was, I think that's a pack of 12, and I want to say they were $15. I could be wrong on the price, forgive me. But I will have this in my Amazon store as well in case you want to check them out. I thought they were really cool. And so I just kind of unraveled them and then just let them tuck right inside of there just randomly. And then I'm tucking the little battery pack behind the little jar. And I'm going to go ahead in a second and grab my tape. This is my double-sided tape. If you have Velcro, I wish I had Velcro because that was what I wanted. I thought I had some in my stash, couldn't find it. So I'm using double-sided tape. But if you have Velcro, use Velcro because that will allow you to pull those off when you need to change the batteries without a lot of fuss. I'll probably be able to pull it off anyway. I'm just going to have a bigger mess to deal with. So highly recommend Velcro for this with the on-off switch facing up so that you can turn them on and off easily. And our flower picks are going to hide that, so you will not see that when the project is finished. So I've got my Dollar Tree picks here. This is a rare occasion when I am not going to cut my picks apart. I'm actually going to tape them together. So I've got 4 of these picks, and I'm going to take 2 at a time. And I am going to use my florist tape, and I'm going to wrap and wrap and wrap and create a single pick with this. So when you use this tape, it's actually kind of funky because when you pull it, it stretches, and when it stretches, it gets sticky, and then it sticks to itself, but it also likes to stick to me. So I'm not a florist, you guys, and I've got another project at the end of this video that's going to prove that even more. But at any rate, once I had it all together, I went ahead and fluffed it out, and I'm pulling some of the pieces of the pick apart a little bit to help support it when I put it down in the ball jar, so it also doesn't fall down inside any further than I want it to. And then I did the exact same thing with the other pick. And there you have it. How sweet are these? And you can change out the flowers for every season. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 9.
So this is my inspiration picture from Kirkland's. It was $39.99. I am going to create my own version with this round wood pallet sign, I suppose you could say. I don't remember if I got this from Michael's or from Walmart. It was one of those two. It's been in my stash for a while, and I finally decided that this is what I wanted to do with it. So giving it a really rough coat of paint with my home decor Adirondack white chalk paint, leaving some of the wood to kind of show through. Once I had that all nice and dry, I am using one of my Arteza paint markers. This is in a brown color. I'm trying to remember what the brown shade is. I think it's the only like chocolate brown color in there. But I am kind of creating my vine around the outside first. And I'm just I'm looking at the picture, to be honest with you, and I'm kind of free forming what I'm doing. Now, this is sped up about 3 times, so you can tell I really am going slow. I'm taking my time. I'm being deliberate about where I want to put these. I might be being a little too careful, if you will. You know, you could totally do this free form. It is not difficult. I am just being a little extra here. So once I had that the way that I wanted it, I'm coming in with another paint marker. This is a chalk paint marker by Arteza, and it's like a cranberry color. I think it was called Wine, but just making little berries around in different places on my vine and just kind of spreading those around. So now I am taking a pencil and I am just kind of getting my letters set and in place. Again, this is sped up about 3 times right now. I'm always tickled when everybody says, "Oh, you've got such beautiful handwriting." I'm like, that is not my handwriting. So I am going to slow it down in just a minute. And so you can see just how slow I really am going with this when I do my hand lettering. Now, obviously this is much larger hand lettering than what I normally do, but you can see I really am drawing these letters. And I love using the pencil because I can erase it when I mess it up and I can get it where I want it. So once I had my basic outline of my letters, I'm coming in with my chalk paint marker and I'm going over it. This is still sped up, you guys. This is still 3 times. Okay, this is normal speed, right? So now I've slowed it down. You can see I'm really taking my time. I am drawing these letters. I am not writing these letters. So I hope that makes some sense. And I hope that that makes you feel a little bit more like this is something you could tackle yourself. You can see how slow I'm going here, right? So it really is drawing. It's taking your time. Don't be afraid to use pencil to get the letters the way you want them before you come in with your paint. And then I'm just going over the pencil really, and I'm just trying to make sure that I am following my guides. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up again for you in just a second, but I did want to slow it down so you can see exactly how much time I take and how deliberate I am. And yeah, so be kind to yourself, take your time, and you can do this. You really can do this. And I'm still in regular speed. Sorry, I guess I figured I would show you a little bit longer how I do this and how long it actually does take me to do it. But I promise you in about 5 more seconds, I'm going to put it back to 3 times the speed. So this won't be as painful to watch. So here we are, sped up again. So now this is 3 times speed. You can see it still looks pretty slow, right? And this is actually at 3 times sped up. And so we'll use some little movie magic to kind of work through this so that you can see how it develops and you don't have to sit and watch as I do this entire thing. But I hope that you're enjoying this video. If you haven't already subscribed, I would be grateful for your subscription if you're enjoying these projects. I've been really enjoying all of my journey over YouTube, and I appreciate y'all so much. So now I have shown you that I'm going to be using my Waverly chalk paint. The one I'm using right now is celery, and the other color that I have there is fern. I did consider using more paint markers for this and then opted to use the actual chalk paint. I just figured with the brush I was going to have a little bit better time with getting the shapes that I wanted. So you could certainly use the paint markers if you're more comfortable with that, but don't be afraid to use the paint, right? So I'm just coming in. I had gone through and made a bunch of little leaves in the celery color, and now I'm coming in around my vines with some of the darker green, the fern color. And once I have all of the leaves that I want, I am going to come in with opposite colors on each of the leaves to give a little bit of dimension. So you can see here I'm using some of the darker green on the lighter green. And then once I have all of that set, I'm going to come back in with some more of the lighter green. And when I came back in with the celery again, and you're going to see that in a second, I did use it to kind of tone down some of the areas with the dark green that I might have had a little heavy hand here and there. So just keep at it with the paint until it's the way that you like it, right? So paint is easy because you can paint right over it. But I'm loving this, and I hope you love it too.
DIY number 10.
So this is a piece wood cut out from the Dollar Tree, and then I have a whole bunch of tissue paper that I picked up at Costco, and I'm just going to pick out one of the pieces of tissue paper. I did this trick in my last video, and I loved it so much I had to do it again on a larger piece. So many thanks to my friend Deirdre at Our Upcycled Life for showing this in one of her videos, because that was how I discovered it. But I gave it a good coat of my Adirondack white chalk paint, and now I'm going over the top with Mod Podge, a really good coat of Mod Podge all the way to the edges, and I'm bringing my tissue paper down over it. I'm smoothing out the wrinkles as best that I can. And then once that's all secure, I'm going to go ahead and trim off all the excess. And then I'm grabbing my lighter. And this, again, is just so satisfying to me. I love this trick. You know, in the past, I've spent so much time trying to sand the edges off of these signs, and yeah, so you burn it and then you take your little brush and sweep it away. So, and then you saw me kind of poking little holes in the places that were enclosed in wood, so to speak. So poked little holes in it and then just hitting it with my lighter as well, and just brushing all the little ashy edges away. And that's it. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 11.
This is my inspiration picture. I saw it on Kirkland's. It is super cute, but out of my price range, so we're gonna make it. I've got a Dollar Tree little bin. I thought I was gonna be able to take that flowers little wording off with some acetone. It wasn't coming off, but that's okay because we're going to go ahead and paint it white anyway. So I thought at first I might be able to use the galvanized tin, but then eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go with that inspiration picture. So I also have these picks that I picked up from the Walmart, and these are boxwood, I suppose, but we're going to make them into whatever that little evergreen was. So I'm taking a wooden dowel and I am using some floral wire, and I'm just wrapping it and wrapping it and wrapping it at the tip of that dowel. And then I'm going to work my way down with some of the other picks. I have a total of 5 of the boxwood picks, and I'm just going to wrap them as you see here and just layer them on here as I go down. So I've got one at the top. I'll layer 2 more side by side or across from each other, and then once those are secure, I'll add in 2 more just down a little bit lower, and you kind of see where they go as you go. So you'll find a really good position for them so they tuck up nicely underneath the one that came before. Hopefully that makes sense. So once I got them all nice and secure, these actually do have like little divots in the stems. So I'm using those to my advantage to just make sure that the wire is catching really strong and staying nice and tight. And I just worked my way back up again. So now I'm using my little wire cutters to cut apart this little berry pick from the Dollar Tree. I'm just doing the little clusters of this, of 3 to 5 berries approximately, and doing my best. Now these are white styrofoam coated with some sort of a red enamel paint, and you can see some of the white is showing. So I pulled out one of my Arteza markers in a similar color. I think this one's called Wine, and I just went ahead and filled it in wherever I saw some white, and you never knew that it was imperfect. It hit it very well. So now I am going into my Cricut Design Studio on my phone. I am looking for something with farm fresh Christmas trees. Once I identified the design I wanted to use, it was already designed. I just picked it and set it up on there. Went ahead and got it to the right size for my little pail, bucket, whatever you want to call that. Used my Cricut Joy to cut it out. And then I went ahead and cut down my vinyl and weeded it and got it prepped. Now, I don't know why, but I tend to struggle with the smart vinyl when I try to get it onto my transfer sheet. So I didn't spend a lot of time showing you how I did that. It took some effort. So if you have trouble with that too, know that you are not alone. But I did finally get it onto my transfer tape. I'm applying it to my bucket. Now it is going to curve a little bit with the tapering of the bucket. So my Farm Fresh to the sides of the truck do kind of end up angling up a little bit. And that's normal just because of the flat design that I was using. And it doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, that's something you might want to keep in mind and make sure you try to account for. I'm just using the back of my transfer tape paper there to help smooth it out so I don't knock up the vinyl as I'm going. I'm just using that same Arteza paint marker in that wine color to trim out the top of my little bucket. And once I'm done with that, I am going to take some of the Dollar Tree, what is that, floaty? You know what I'm talking about? Noodle, pool noodle. And I'm cutting this down to go inside my bucket to hold my greenery. Put a very generous amount of hot glue on there. I'm going to tuck it down inside, make sure I've got it centered. And then I'm cutting up smaller pieces of the pool noodle to wedge in around there just to give it some more stability, fill up my bucket, and so that I don't have to use a whole lot of more expensive filler to get it set up and for us to hide this actually later. So I'm just wedging it in there, holding the center really strong so that I don't end up knocking it out as I am wedging those other pieces in. And so you can see this holds it really well. Now I'm using just regular old Dollar Tree plastic bags and I'm tucking those in. Again, I'm just trying to fill this up with inexpensive material so that I'm not having to use more expensive, fancy looking materials to fill the whole bucket. So we'll come back to that in a minute, but right now I'm going to take all my little berries. You can see Sammy is off to the left watching me work, my little love bug, but he's frequently with me. But I am just taking my little berries with hot glue, adding a little bit of hot glue to the berries, and then tucking them in on the little branches here and there towards the tips, wherever I decided I liked it. This is Excelsior from the Dollar Tree that I'm dropping in around the base of my little bucket around my little tree. And I'll show you right now. See how cute? Loving this.
DIY number 12.
So this was my inspiration picture, $69.95 at Kirkland's. We're going to use Dollar Tree supplies. I've got a couple of different types of Dollar Tree lights. I settled on the ones with the little stars on them that I got from last year. And I've got a couple of these little Christmas trees. I'm fluffing them out a little bit, but leaving them largely flat. And I am putting their little tree trunks together. I'm going to use some floral wire for this one. And I'm just going to wrap that wire around the trunks and wrap and wrap and wrap until I use up that whole length of the wire and I've got it as secure as I can. So I'm just twisting that off and I'm going to keep wrapping it around the tree. That's probably about an 18-inch length. Now I am coming in with some hot glue just to make it more secure. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my lights ready while that is cooling off. So popping my little batteries in, making sure that the lights work, and then screwing that little lid back on there. And now I'm going to start with the battery pack near the trunks in the middle, and I'm going to draw the lights up the back until the first light is up near the top, and then I'm going to thread it around and through from top to bottom. You might look at this and think side to side, but remember this is a railing swag, so there actually is a top and a bottom with the points. So making sure my lights are looking nice, and I'm using some of these little branches and the wire in them to my advantage to wrap around the lights and just secure them a little bit better where I want them. So I am not going to rip apart these picks, at least the berry picks. I'm going to leave them whole. So I'm just setting everything in place for right now to make sure that I'm happy with where it is before I commit. So I'm just getting those in place, and then I am cutting apart my little, I don't know what kind of flowers these are. I want to say they're like mini poinsettias, but I don't think that's what they are. So once I am happy with where everything is, I am going to wire off the middle of those picks again, come in with more hot glue, just make sure everything is nice and secure. And I'm going to use hot glue for all of my little flower picks to make sure that they are going to stay put. So now I've got my Kirkland ribbon. You guys have all heard me talk about my Kirkland ribbon if you've followed me for any length of time. I love it because you get so much of it for such a great price. And if you are interested in a bow tutorial, I do have a bow tutorial video that I will link in my description box for you as well. But for now, I am just creating a bow with 3 loops on either side. I'm going to squish it in the middle right there, use another length of ribbon, which I will tie around the middle. And when you do that, it always goes a little wonky at first, but just know that we're just going to fluff out those loops again, and it will be just fine. So I tied that off, and I'm going to go ahead and fluff up my ribbon and play with it until I get it the way I want it. My goal is to make it sufficiently large so it covers up that middle section and looks pretty. So I'm just setting it down now, checking to see how it looks. I'm going to flip my little tail the other way because it was looking kind of strange. So just play with it until you get it the way that you want it. And trust me, you can do this. So once I have the bow the way that I like it, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over. And that same, we're going to flip that battery pack out of the way for right now. We're not going to worry about that just a second. We'll come back to that in a moment. But that same piece that I wrapped around the middle of the bow to make that bow is what I used to tie it to the piece and then trim that off. So now for the battery pack, we want to make sure that the on-off switch is facing upward. And I'm going to create a little pouch for it on the back. And this is going to serve to hide the battery pack, hold the battery pack in place for function, and also be a way for us to get it out hopefully relatively easily when we need to change the batteries. So I'm just rolling this. I'm making sure it's a little bit wider at the top than it is at the bottom so that the bottom will grab it and not let it fall through. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to secure it to the back of my swag. So getting that all nice and secure. And then I'm going to go ahead and slide the battery pack in there in just a second once I'm confident that everything is glued down properly. So dropping the battery pack in there, and there you have it. I love this. I hope that you love it too. We're just going to fluff the ribbon up some more, trim off the ends. I'm just dovetailing them real quick. And that's it. I can't wait to make some more of these and have them hanging on my banister.
DIY number 13.
So for this project, I am using one of these styrofoam trees from the Dollar Tree, and it had this like seam in it, and I decided I didn't like that, so I was gonna try and spackle it. So yeah, I don't know. It camouflaged it a little bit. I don't know that it would have been worth this effort. Of course, then I decided I'm going to spackle the whole thing. You do not need to go to this effort. You certainly can if you wish, but probably not necessary. Once it was completely dry, I gave it a good sanding just to get it nice and smooth. And then I gave it a good coat of Adirondack white chalk paint by Home Decor. So once it was all dry, I came in with my Mod Podge. I'm using a matte Mod Podge. You can certainly use gloss if you prefer. I've got some water there with a paintbrush, and I have my tissue paper. This is also from the Dollar Tree. And I am just tracing around the areas of the tissue paper that I want to cut out. I'm actually going to rip it. When you're decoupaging, if you rip your paper, it is less noticeable around the edges when you decoupage it. If you cut it, it tends to be much more apparent. You can see those cut lines. So highly recommend that you rip it. Now when you use the water like that, it just allows you to rip it in a much more controlled manner. So I'm applying some of my Mod Podge, putting down my tissue paper pieces, and then coming back over it with more Mod Podge to smooth it down. And working with smaller pieces like this, if you haven't done Mod Podge before, this just makes it much easier to avoid wrinkles and bubbles and the like. So just working my way around, and especially with something like this, it's tapered. It's, you know, it's almost impossible not to get wrinkles if you try to put one major sheet on here and want it to look the way that you want it. So now I'm using a wood bead and then this little tiny wooden disc, and then I'm also going to use a larger circle of wood as well in a moment. I'm just trying to make a base for my Christmas tree, and I was thinking if I had that little circle, it would have more grab power for the tree, and then I decided I was going to do it this way. So I have my round circle on the base. That's going to be the base of my tree. I stuck a skewer in. I kind of abandoned that little piece, that little round piece of wood, and now I'm just tucking this down into the tree, and you can see it stands up quite nicely. I'm just going to give that a coat of white, and we'll be all done.
DIY number 14.
So I'm starting out with some wooden beads, and I do have these in my Amazon store, which you can find a link to in my description box. But I'm getting the beads all prepped. I was just showing you my ocean chalk paint, and I am going to do these first 7 beads in ocean. You can see I've got a pattern going on down at the bottom of the screen, and so I was just trying to figure out how many beads I wanted in each color. So 7 in the dark blue, then I'm using my crystal chalk paint for another 12 beads, and then I'm going to be doing 6 more of them in my Adirondack white. So while those are all drying, I'm going to go ahead and take this little tag sign from the Dollar Tree. I thought it was so cute, but of course we're going to give it a makeover. I started trying to peel off the paper and then just sanded off the glitter instead, and now I'm just giving it a good coat on both sides of the sign with my white chalk paint. I'm not too worried about the side that had the glitter on it because we will cover that up a little bit later. So once that's dry, I'm actually taking out these two little snowflakes that I picked up from the Goodwill, and I'd gotten them, it was 4 in the pack, I think, for just $1. They're originally from Hobby Lobby. They were like 47 cents each, so I got them like 50% off, right? So giving these a coat of crystal, I'm really only concerned with the one side and all these little nooks and crannies because I am going to be attaching it to my little tag sign later. So now I am getting all of my little beads ready to string. These are all dry, and I'm going to string them up on my twine here, and I'm going in the pattern that I had established in my little head a little bit earlier. So before I attach the garland to my little tag sign, I want to make sure that I finish off the back of my sign. This is all dry now, so I'm tracing it. Usually I use craft paper, but I thought it would be really cute to use some scrapbook paper for this. So you can see I've got that little tiny buffalo check. So I am just using my Mod Podge, and I'm making sure that my little sign is completely covered, and then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that that's secured on there. And then I'm going to poke out the little hole where we're going to be threading our sign again. So having our garland hang off of the little sign. I was just using my little Cricut weeding tool for that. So I'm flipping through a loop of my twine here. And I'm going to take the entire garland and just run it through that loop so that I'm attaching the garland to the little sign. There might be an easier way of doing this. I don't really know, but this is the way that I chose to do it. So, and I did it this way because I wanted to be able to thread that tail back up through all of the beads, and I just wanted it to be a nice clean look. So I'm just going to thread that on back up through, pull all those beads down, and then I'll be able to tie off the other end of my garland. So once I've got all of that set, I am actually going to go ahead and make a tassel for the end of the garland. So I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers. I wrapped it probably about 30 times. And then once that's all done, I will take a smaller piece and wrap it through the top loop and tie it off nice and tight. And then I'll take another piece and I will wrap it around what I like to call the head of the tassel, just to create that neck, so to speak. So once I get that all wrapped, I'll go ahead and tie that off and get that all pulled through and have all of my little ends ready. And then I did cut the ends. I cut all those little loops. I don't think I showed you when oh, yep, I did. So I went ahead and I cut them all off, and then I went ahead and I trimmed them over my trash can. So sorry, I'm not showing you that there. I just wanted to make sure that they were all nice and even. And so then I went ahead and I used my little Cricut tool to kind of free up a little hole there at the top, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to thread this back through here. So I had tied it so tight, and I always like my tassels to be nice and clean. So I don't like a lot of knots and extra little strands sticking out. So you can see I'm kind of creating a space with my Cricut tool here to be able to thread my twine back in through the top of the tassel, and that works just fine. So then I went ahead and I pulled it through, pulled it tight, tied a knot there at the top, and then I went ahead and cut it off, and now I am just like on the other end, I'm threading my twine back up through. And that was when I ran out of space on my camera, that thing, yeah. So I'm just showing you, I adhered my little snowflakes. I used my little glitter marker to write "Let It Snow" on them, and that was it. And I'm in love with this. I think it's so cute, but let me know what you think.
DIY number 15.
So I have started to do some chalk couture. This is part of a kit that I got. I am a consultant, so just want to disclose that. There is some information in my description box in my link tree if you'd like to check it out. But I am starting out with a little wood square, and I am going to be using one of these transfers, this little guy with the snowman. So this is the first time I'm using these, you guys. There's another project that was actually my first, but I'm doing this one first to show you. But using my ocean chalk paint again, you saw that I had cleaned up the little wood square first, and then I'm laying down my transfer. Now you can use these over and over again. I think I was told that you can use them usually up to about 10 times. It's different from a stencil in that it's more like a silk screen, so there's a little bit of a mesh wherever you see that knockout. So where you can see that blue, it's like a mesh. So I'm coming in with what they refer to as the paste with my little squeegee, and I'm just running that right over the transfer and just making sure that it's nice and smoothed out. And then I'm going to peel that transfer right up, and you can see how cute. I love this, and y'all, if you've been following me for any bit of time, you know I love snowmen. So I'm just coming in with some chalk paint now, and I am creating some snow all around our little snowman friend, and just going to kind of make it a little bit heavier down at the ground area where he is situated, and just getting it to where it makes my heart happy. And then I decided to come in with some black chalk paint. I'm going to make our little snowman friend a hat. And you can embellish these as much or as little as you want. You don't have to, but if you choose to, this is certainly an option. So making his little hat, and then I'm going to come in with some other colors in a moment to take care of his little nose. So here I come in with some orange. I think this was my my pumpkin chalk paint. So did of his little nose for him. So he's got his little carrot nose. And then I went ahead and decided I was going to color in his scarf with my red chalk paint. I think this is called Crimson. I believe this one is Waverly. And then doing his little eyes, his buttons, these are all being done in black. And I did decide to go over the letters. Right now they're in that ocean color because it was the space that did not get covered with the white, but I decided to make it black. So there he is, so cute. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 16.
So this is going to be a quick and easy way to add some extra interest to your tiered trays. This is a little cutout that my sister actually had picked up for me at the Hobby Lobby. No, not Hobby Lobby, Michael's, sorry. I believe it was 99 cents, and she'd gotten it on sale for 20% off, so it was like 80 cents. And it stands up on its own. I'm using my crystal chalk paint. Once it's all dry, I'm coming in with a metallic blue marker from the Dollar Tree. Now, I started using my metallic blue marker because I thought that the point on this was going to be thinner than the point on my glitter marker, which is also this shade. And this was pretty, but I was thinking, you know what? I really wanted a little bit more of a shimmer to it. So I decided to come back in with my glitter marker, and the point on it was no fatter than the other one. So it ended up, it would have been just fine on its own, but I just went ahead and traced back over it so it would have a little bit of a shimmer to it. I don't think it shows up on camera here, but I really love the way that it turned out.
DIY number 17.
So I mentioned that we were going to be doing another couture project. Now I think this is really cool because with their signs, you can actually wash them off later and put something else on them. So the signs are reusable, the transfers are reusable, so it's really cool. So that was a fuzzing cloth. It was meant to try to reduce the tackiness a little bit so that it's easier to get it off of whatever you're using it on when you're done with your transfer, if that makes sense. So I'm coming in with my white paste. I'm just being very careful, and then I'm using this other tool that they sent me and using some of my green. I've got all of these cute little packets of different colors of paste that I'm trying out, and a little bit goes a long way. So I don't know if you can see, I'm just squeezing a little tiny bit of it out on my little squeegee tool, and then I'm applying it to my design. I was probably a little bit too sparing because you're going to see in a little bit that there were a couple of places where could have been a little bit heavier with the paste. But again, this was the very first time that I tried to do this ever. So again, super easy. If I was this successful with it, I'm not saying it was perfect because like I said, I probably could have done it a little bit better. But if I was this successful with it the very first time, you know, you guys could do this too. And as I mentioned, I'll have a link in my link tree in the description box if you want to take a closer look. But coming in, I had done the bird in blue, as you can see. I had some red for the little berries and for his little beak. And now this is a silver shimmer, I believe they call it, for the snowflakes. And then I'm just going to peel that right up. Maybe we're peeling. Here we go for the reveal. And look how pretty. I love it. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 18.
Here is the inspiration for our final project, sweet little gold Christmas trees. I am using Dollar Tree paper towel holders, two of which, oh, and then this is a wire from a Hobby Lobby pick that I'd pulled apart a while back. And it's a pretty solid wire, so I'm not going to lie. I really struggled with getting this to curve into the right size circle that I needed to complement my project. So once I had that pretty much where I wanted it, I was going to use my soldering iron, and my soldering iron just, this is the first time I was actually going to use it to solder. I usually use it to melt stuff. It just wasn't working. I ended up ordering a new one. So this is the new one. I was reading the instructions, making sure I knew what I was doing. And here I am trying to solder everything together. I just have a bunch of rubber bands on it right now, holding it kind of in place because I really could have used a third hand. You know what? I was struggling with this one, you guys. It is, I think this is probably the first project in the year and a half that I've had my channel that I considered giving up on the project and just throwing in the towel. This one was really giving me a hard time. And I was determined to try and get it to work. You know, every time with the solder, I thought I had it, you know, together, I would start taking the rubber bands off and the thing would pop open again. It was a challenge to say the least. Eventually, I did get my little hoop to do what I needed it to do. And you can see there, the solder is finally like there. So I got it. I was good with it. But then I did start trying to put the rest of the pieces together, and you're going to see in just a minute. I was struggling. So if you have any tips for soldering, let me know. I know it says that it works best with ferrous materials. I'm not sure if I know what that means. I know in French, fer means iron, so I don't know if that's what it means or if there's another definition. But I don't know. If you solder things, let me know your thoughts on that. But I went ahead and pulled apart my paper towel holders to get my other two size rings that I wanted. And then I went ahead and I started using my heavy duty wire cutters to score and score and score the ends of the paper towel holders so that I had just the straight parts. So once I had that all done, I am starting to think about how I'm going to piece this all together. And again, this was a bit of a struggle. Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure that all of my little tips on my legs are kind of coming together and trying to piece all of this together. I figured if I could connect all of the hoops to the legs, it might, provide some stability. So I'm using rubber bands to attach everything. I'm basically just trying to build this little guy with string and paper clips practically, but I'm just using rubber bands and trying to get it in some semblance of the shape that I'm going for. So once I had that done, I went ahead and grabbed my soldering iron again, and I am doing my very best to solder this. And I had it to a point where it looked really great and it looked super solid and it was doing well and it was, all fine and good. And I tried flipping it upside down to do the next step, and the whole thing like fell apart on me. So I'm probably going to show you here in just a second where it falls apart. So eventually, yeah, it's so frustrating. So I was like, you know what? I am going to see if my Star Bond crazy glue will work on this. This was my last ditch effort. I've got my medium Star Bond glue and the accelerator that I was spraying on there. And you know what? It worked like a charm. I was amazed. My Star Bond glue, oh, awesome. And you can find that in my Amazon store if you're interested in checking that out. There's a link in my description box. So now I'm using my Rust-Oleum gold. I think this is actually called Gold Mirror. It's a shiny gold spray paint. I got that all sprayed up. You want to make sure you're doing that in a well-ventilated area. And now I'm taking one of these little stars from the Dollar Tree. I'm hot gluing that up onto the top, and that's it. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 19.
So for this project, I am using this sign from Michael's that I had gotten in a grab box for $5 with a whole bunch of other stuff. It's normally $24.99, so I thought that this was a great deal. So I am going to be using my home decor chalk paint in Adirondack white, and I'm going to cover up all of the decoration that you see there. So I'm leaving the frame as is, but covering up the floral and all the words, and that took 3 good coats to make sure that everything was cleaned up and hidden for me. So once that was all dry, I went ahead and I cut down my xoxo transfer and got that ready, and went ahead and centered it in the middle of my board. And then I went ahead and I got my little tape measure to make sure that everything was right in the middle. And once it was, I went ahead and kind of rubbed it down so that it was all good to go. This is really cool. It's like a silk screen kind of thing. So it's different than a stencil, but you can still use it over and over again for, I think, 10 or 12 times is what I've heard. So I'm going to use my pomegranate, and then I have a green shimmer, and the pomegranate's going on first with my little squeegee. And this is a new type of thing for me, you guys. I signed up for xoxo a couple of months ago. I haven't done a lot of playing with it yet. This is, I think, my second piece that I've done with it, maybe third. But so I'm still learning how all of the paste works, and I understand after the fact that I need to mix it before I just jump in with it. The shimmer went down beautifully. My pomegranate, because of the thickness of the paste, because I did not stir it, it was a little bit blotchy, but I do go back in later and fix that, and I'm sure that next time I will have a much better success with it. But I'm using the same colors with the back of a paintbrush right now just to give little dots all around the outside. Once it's dry, I'm going to come in with my next, I'm going to call it a layer. I'm only calling it a layer because I knew it was going to, the transfer itself was going to overlap my mistletoe word there, so I didn't want to mess that up. So I had to wait until it was all dry. But I am just doing my little mistletoe transfer with the green shimmer, and I'm finding a little of this goes a long way. It's really, really great. So these little jars or pots, whatever you want to call them, should last me quite a while. So I'm going to come in and do the same thing with the other side, just laying down my little mistletoe, and then I'll go ahead and I will peel it up. I love seeing these reveals. I think it's so cool. So there we are. Now I'm coming back in with a little paintbrush, and I am just filling in where my little word was a little bit blotchy. So this actually turned out so sweet. I love this, and I hope that you like it as much as I do. I'm going to give you a peek at it all complete right here.
DIY number 20.
Here is my inspiration picture for my first Kirkland dupe. And I am starting out with a Dollar Tree doormat, and I had created a stencil with my Cricut thinking that this was going to be a good way to get this started. Not really thinking about the fact that with this floor mat or the doormat, it's got a lot of ridges to it, and it's not the best material to try to stencil on with a sticky stencil that you've got to transfer this way. If I had just a regular stencil that I could hold down and work with, it probably would work, but this is just not one to stick. So I finally gave up, decided I was going to hold on to this for some other project in the future, and I pulled out my Arteza chalk paint marker. Actually, I think this one is an acrylic paint marker, and I am going to hand letter this. Now, I've got my little image in front of me on my phone, and I am just kind of eyeballing how things need to go. Keep in mind that this is sped up about 3 times, so I am just coming in and giving it like a little bit of a rough draw, if you will, and then I'll come back in and I will thicken out my letters and give myself a good base for coming back through with my actual paint. So you can do this. I know frequently I have people ask me about my handwriting. This is not my handwriting. I am drawing, and you can kind of see that I am working very slowly, and this is sped up about 3 times. So really excited about today's video. I hope that you'll forgive some of my camera angles today. I am in the process of redoing my craft room, and so this is a new setup that I've got going on, and I am kind of playing with where the camera is set up. So please bear with me, and I do welcome your feedback on the camera angles, and if there's one you like better than another, let me know. But I'm coming in now with my chalk paint that I picked up at the Restore, the Habitat for Humanity Restore. This is called Winter, and I've got a flat paintbrush that I'm coming in and using to deposit my paint on to my mat right over all of those letters that I had created with my paint marker. And the reason I did it with the paint marker first, I just felt like I was going to have more control over how my letters were going to be, and I knew I would be able to just come back in over it with the paint. And with these mats, I've been really amazed at how they are really pretty forgiving. First of all, they absorb a lot of paint, so you definitely need a lot of paint because they are floor mats, so you know they're absorbent, but they don't bleed, so it's really easy to work with when it comes to the paint. Now, for my little holly leaves, I had started trying to see if I could just go ahead and paint it directly, and I wasn't feeling as confident when I started trying to do that. So I did come back in. You can barely even see it, but I did go in and create the outline for my leaves with my green paint marker. And then I just came in, I filled in all of those leaves with my paint. I want to say that paint color is called Irish. I'm gonna have to go back and look because I can't remember off the top of my head. But then I'm also using my red chalk paint, and this is either crimson. I think this is the crimson. The other one it would have been is called Imperial, but I'm pretty sure this is the crimson that I'm using. And then I came back in with my fern chalk paint. This is a little bit darker. And I did the outline of my holly leaves and just the little detail down the middle of the leaves to kind of form the leaf. So that is pretty much it, you guys. And I am so happy with this. I hope that you like it too, but let me know your thoughts.
DIY number 21.
So here's my inspiration from Kirkland for my second project. I'm starting out with a Dollar Tree canvas. I'm just going to go ahead and get that ready. I am pulling out all of the staples from the back side of it. I'm just using a flat head screwdriver and then my pliers. Just be careful when you do this because those little staples get sharp. So removing the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and set my frame aside for a minute, trimming down all of the excess off of the canvas because I'm going to be reapplying this to the frame later. So I just want to make sure that it all fits and nothing hangs over. Taking my antique wax by Waverly with a baby wipe, and I am just going to stain my little frame because this will be visible. This is going to be just an exterior frame for our canvas. And then I took a pencil. I'm just kind of deciding where I want my little tree trunks for our little painting that we're going to create here. So just very lightly doing that, and then I'm identifying where I want the points, the tips of my trees. So with Java chalk paint, I'm coming in with a little brush and I'm just creating the little tree trunks. I'm doing it very lightly and not with full strokes. It's kind of wispy strokes so that you've got a little bit of dimension to it. Now I've set myself up with fern, moss, and plaster chalk paints, and I've got another brush. It's a little bit of a larger brush, and I'm starting out with the fern, and I'm just doing little wispy strokes, and I'm starting at the bottom and I'm working my way up so that as the little branches are layered, they lay with the upper branches on top of the lower branches the way that a tree would actually look, right? So now I'm coming back in with some of the not fern, that one is the moss and the plaster. And I've got a little bit of both on the sides of my brush. So on the left side, I've got the moss. On the right side, I've got the plaster. I'm just kind of coming in and layering these up. And where needed, I did go back and just pick up some more of the fern to make sure that I've got some dimension with my trees here. So just little wispy strokes. And this wasn't really all that hard, you guys. I was a little intimidated when I first started doing it. And, you know, some of my trees I like better than others. The one on the far left is my favorite of these three. The one on the far right, I don't know. It was almost like I had beginner's luck and then I didn't do as well as I kept going. I don't know what it was. But I still think these are really super cute. And this is such a nice little gift idea that you can create for, you know, a friend, or if you're going to some sort of a holiday party and just want to have something for them. It serves as just this warm wish. So writing in with my black Sharpie here, warm winter wishes. And again, this is sped up about 3 times so you can see I'm really being very careful and deliberate That was the word I was looking for with what I'm doing here. So warm winter wishes. And once that's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and reapply it to the frame. So I'm going to be grabbing my staple gun as soon as I've got it all lined up. And we're just going to stretch the canvas as best we can to get it to where it needs to be and make sure that it's nice and tight across the frame. So starting in the two upper corners, just checking again, I've got everything nice and even so it doesn't look crooked when we flip it back over, and just securing that. So once I got those top two corners, I'm going to pull down in the center at the bottom and secure that, and then I'm going to work my way around and make sure that the canvas is nice and tight and secure all the way around the frame. Let me know what you think of this project.
DIY number 22.
So this is my inspiration for the next project. And I am using a Dollar Tree gift bag. I'm kind of feeling like this is a little bit of a cheat, but I really love the way that it turns out. And I do build the frame, so there is that. So I am using these 1x2 strips from the Home Depot. It was like $1.18 for the 8-foot length. Cut it all down to size, making sure that it fits my Dollar Tree gift bag. I think it ended up being about 14 inches tall, and I want to say 18 or 19 inches across. But you can really size it to whatever your gift bag size is. So now I'm giving the frame a coat of silver lining chalk paint. I should have waited to paint it until afterwards, so do as I say, not as I do. But I'm using my Gorilla Wood Glue here to attach the frame pieces together, and that's part of why I should have painted it afterwards. You get a much better bond when you've got wood on wood, and it occurred to me after the fact. So you just want to make sure you glue it first, and then you can come in and paint it. So once I have it all glued, I am going to come back in with my staple gun again, and I'm putting 2 staples across the seam at each corner, and that's going to really help secure it. The wood glue is going to give it a great bond, but these staples are just going to really help it out, especially while it's still drying. So once I've got that all in there, I'm gonna go ahead and flip it back over, and I am kind of sealing in the corners with some extra paint. I'm kind of camouflaging the fact that I hadn't done it beforehand. So once I've got that done and it's all nice and dry, I'm going to go ahead and attach our image. And we're going to do this very much like we did with our little pine tree painting earlier. And I'm getting it all nice and lined up and coming in with my staple gun across the back. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm working on a new craft room setup. I will have a video coming out on that in a few weeks. But in the meantime, my craft room is completely torn apart and I can't find anything. So what I would normally do with my next step is to cover the back of this with my plain craft paper to make it nice and finished. Can't find it right now. I'm going to have to do that later, but I did want to mention that. So you just run a bead of glue, hot glue around it, and put that down, and then you'd be all set, and it would look nice and professional. And I love this, but let me know what you think.
DIY number 23.
Here's my inspiration for my 4th project, this cute little Noel pillow. I have some more of this green fabric that I've used in a few other videos, and I'm going to go ahead and figure out what size I need to cut this down to. I've got these pillow forms that I've had in my stash for a while from Joann Fabric, or Joann's, I guess is what they're called now. I honestly don't recall what the price was on them because I literally probably bought them about 10 years ago. So I've had them for a while, finally getting around to using them. I am cutting down my fabric, and I'm going to be doing what I call this the envelope method. I'm sure that that is not the right term for it, but essentially we're creating a sham so that we can switch this out throughout the seasons, right? So I'll be able to reuse this pillow form by just pulling it out, putting my sham away, and then creating a new one for whatever the next season is. So using my hot glue, I'm creating a seam there. I still haven't fixed my sewing machine. It is on my to-do list. Eventually you guys will actually see me sew something, but if you're not a sewer, just know that hot glue is definitely an option. It works fine. I was amazed the first time that I actually tried it because I am a basic sewer and I normally would revert to the sewing machine. But you know what? The hot glue does the job. So I just want to be careful with it with stuff like this. So I've got my cord that I'm laying out in my Noel form, and then I'm just going to take my hot glue and I am going to very carefully apply a little bit of glue at a time and make sure that I'm keeping the form of my letters the way that I want it. Now, if I had more time, I would definitely hand sew this part. If you have the time to do it and you want it done right, I highly recommend hand sewing it from underneath with just a little hidden stitch that you can pull through. So you would just pin down your letters in the shape that you want and just hand sew this. I have been going a little crazy with the work, so my full-time job that is, so I didn't have the extra time to do this the way that I'm recommending. Again, if you're not a sewer, the hot glue will do the job. It actually turned out really sweet. Um, but if you want to do it the right way really would be to hand sew those letters on there. So I'm going back and doing my seam, a bead of hot glue all the way up the side, and I'm going to seal that down. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And while we are doing this, I am thinking about what I want to ask you guys. What is your favorite holiday song? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Christmas song. It could be a Hanukkah song. It could be something completely different holiday wise. But what is your favorite holiday song? But now we're going ahead and shoving our little pillow form in here. And now I am taking the yarn that I had shown at the very beginning of this project, getting my needle all threaded. This is a nice sharp, it said it was a doll needle, but it's got a nice large head on it so that I was able to thread it with the yarn. And I'm using what I refer to as a blanket stitch. I don't know if that is accurate or not, but essentially you come up through the fabric and you're leaving the stitch on the outside. It's a decorative stitch, right? So you come up and then you flip your needle through the loop before you pull it all the way tight. I'm gonna kind of zoom in here for you so you can see. So coming up, and then I've got this really long right now because I want to be able to make my way all the way around the pillow. So then flip it through there. I'm going to do it again, and I'm slowing it down for you in a second. Maybe not on this stitch, but the next one I'll slow it down a little bit so you can see. But you just grab the loop. So hopefully you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Here we go. We're slowing down here for a second. So coming up through, pulling it all through. But before you get it all the way completely done, see that loop there? We're going to grab that with the needle and pull the yarn back through again. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to work that all the way around the pillow. Once I get to the end, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that everything is connected. And I'm going to tie a little knot at the back of it so it's nice and secure and also little discreet knot. I had started this down at the bottom right corner of the pillow, so when you're looking at it, it's really going to be not so noticeable. And that's it. I think this is so cute, but let me know what you think. And how did I do?
DIY number 24.
For this project, I have some leftover pieces of paint sticks that I had cut off for other projects. And you can see they're all different, varying lengths. And I am using my Dollar Tree sanding block to just get them cleaned up a little bit. And now I have a couple of craft sticks that I'm going to cut down to create little brims here. So my paint stick was kind of flying on me, but I managed to snag it back. So they were a little bit too wide, so I went ahead and cut them down the middle as well. And I'm just getting them all lined up. I'm using a straight edge here because I wanted all of my hats to be the same. So I'm really just eyeballing it more than anything else, but I'm doing my best to keep them all the same. And I apologize if you hear what sound like bells jingling. I've actually got Sammy here with me as per usual. So if you haven't been following me until recently, Sammy is my little pup and he hangs out with me all the time when I'm crafting and when I'm editing my videos, and sometimes he can be vocal. But at any rate, I went ahead and painted the bottom part of this right up to the little brim with Adirondack white chalk paint. And then, as you saw, I had grabbed a few clothespins to hold these up while they were drying. It occurred to me that I was coating all of the sides and I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. So the clothespins came in handy. Now I am coming back with my black chalk paint by Home Decor. And I am obviously painting the little hats on these now. And I was just being real careful as I went around the sides and the back and just made sure that my lines were nice and straight. And then I put them right back in the clothespins to dry. So that actually worked really well. Neat little hack for you. But once they were all dry, I am now using one of my Arteza paint markers. This is an acrylic paint marker. You can use different brands, but I happen to have Arteza. And I am drawing little eyeballs. So basically drawing a circle and then a little bit of a crescent to leave a white spot area. It might be a little hard to see here. I'm hoping it's going to become a little bit more visible. But essentially you want to leave a portion of your eye white. And then I'm coming in with my bright orange, also by Arteza, and I'm doing little tiny circles, and they get gradually smaller as they go out to the tip of his little carrot nose. So hopefully that makes sense. So just little circles, they get gradually smaller. So now I pulled out a few things from my stash that my sweet subscriber Rose had sent to me. And I tried out those little stickers with the snowflakes, and they were too big for this. And then I had these letters, letters. And the first set was a little too small. The next set was a little too big. I needed something that was just right. So I ended up hand lettering it because I didn't have any stickers that were going to be the right size. And I didn't want to pull out my Cricut or anything like that. I didn't want this to be too complicated. So I am just doing block letters. I apologize that my big old hand is in the way there and you can't really see what I'm doing exactly, but essentially just making regular letters, taking my time, drawing the letters, and then making them thicker as I go. So just regular block letters. And once I had that all done, I was going to come back in with my Aleene's tacky, I think it's called tacky glue. It's just you could use regular school glue, it doesn't matter. But I am adding some glue, and again, I know it's hard to see here, but I'm adding some glue to the tops of my letters and to like the little crevices of the letters. And I'm adding in white glitter. Now, a funny thing happened with this glitter. I do not know why, but it turned like a reddish color. I don't know if it was some sort of a chemical reaction with the glue. I mean, it was white when I put it on there. You can see how white it is. And yeah, it ended up turning color when it was dry. So I have pink snow reddish snow instead of white snow on my little snowmen, but I think it's still cute. So hopefully you'll like it too. But once I had them all coated with glitter, I went ahead and knocked the rest of it off onto my parchment paper. And this allows me to put all of that excess right back into the container. And I love that the parchment paper is already creased because it just makes the job that much easier. So now I'm going to stack my little snowmen together so that they can sit upright. My little straight edge was not fat enough, so of course I'm using my sweet tart box because why not, right? So, and I am doing this up against a straight edge because I want these little guys to be able to stand up on their own, right? So we want to make sure that they are all flush at the base. So hopefully that makes sense. But coming in and gluing them at the seams, and then went ahead and added in a pretty generous amount of additional hot glue because it didn't seem like they were going to hold real well. So I went back and at each seam at the back, I added a nice dollop of hot glue. Once it was nice and cool, they were all set. Aren't these cute? I love them so much. So when I was done, I decided I really thought it needed something more. I had that one snowman that was a little bit taller than the rest of them. So I pulled out this fabric that I'd picked up at Walmart. It was $4 for 2 yards, and I thought that was a really good buy. I really like this fabric a lot. I can see myself doing a lot of different projects with it. In fact, I've got another one coming up shortly where I'm going to use this fabric again. So I just cut off a strip. It was probably about 8 inches long and 2 inches wide, and just tied it around his little neck.
DIY number 25.
So I am using these little Dollar Tree gnome head pick things, as well as a clear ornament that I had actually gotten at Michael's, I believe. It was either Michael's or Hobby Lobby. It was end of season. I'm always getting stuff on clearance or at least on sale. So it was probably $1, maybe $1.50. So I had cut down the pick, as you could see, and I took off the little head of the ornament. And so hopefully you're kind of getting the idea that I'm going to be building a gnome here. But yeah, this was interesting. I needed to get rid of that little nubby, and I kept progressing. You guys are going to think I'm insane. Yeah, my miter saw. But you know what? If I am nothing else, I am determined, and we got that little nubby off. And so once I had it off, and I probably should have just used my glue gun, and melted it. I don't know, guys. Where there's a will, there's a way, and sometimes my way is a little bit bizarre. But anyway, got it off, sanded it down a little bit. Word of the wise, you might not want to use a heat gun on this because, yeah, I totally melted my ornament. So, uh, yeah, that'll just be the back, right? So that was the body. I used crimson chalk paint on my little body. And now I am using some gray adhesive felt, and I'm just drawing out some feet. Now I did double it over here so that I can have 2 layers. So it'll be felt on the top and the bottom. This is sticky. So I want the two sticky layers to come together. So I'm just kind of trimming them up and making sure that they are the same shape, etc. So I took off the backings, and now I'm just going to apply them together here. So once we have that all set, I'm just going to make sure I trim off any excess edges. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my little gnome. I had brushed all of his little furry hair out of the way, and I'm going to apply a pretty generous amount of hot glue here, if I can get my glue to go down into the gun. And so then I'm going to pop on the little ornament and just brush his hair down over. And now I'm going to go ahead and add him to his little feet. So just a healthy amount of hot glue on there, set his little bod down, and he is standing. So here is that fabric again, and I am just trying to figure out how wide I want to make it to make little arms. So As you can see, it's probably again about a 2-inch width, but I do have it folded over because I want two arms, and I made them probably about 4 inches long. I did just cut that in half. And now I'm going to fold them right side in. So inside out. Inside out? Yes, inside out. So I can go ahead and create seams. And then once those are dry, or not dry, but cool, you know what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and flip them right side out. And if you have something small like this, you can grab a pencil or something like that. A dowel would work as well, and just roll it through like you saw me do. Now I'm stuffing it with a little bit of fiberfill, and once I have the little arms stuffed, I'm going to go ahead and apply them to his body. So I had just flattened the one end of the arm and sealed it up with hot glue, and that's the end that I am applying just underneath his hair there. So now for his little hands, I've got some more felt, adhesive felt, and I was attempting to draw a mitten and I didn't like what I did. So good thing about pencils, you can always erase, and good thing about the back of this felt, you're gonna throw that part away anyway. So I went ahead and cut off a piece that I could fold in half because again, I'm gonna be doing front and back to his little mitten hands. So just like we did with the base, I'm gonna be doing a front and back for each of his hands. So once I had that the way that I wanted it, and again, I cut out the front and the back, I went ahead and I traced those two little mittens so that I would have a right hand and a left hand. Got it? So I wanted 4 total and wanted to make sure that each pair matched so they are mirrors of each other. So then I went ahead and got his little hand ready. So I sealed up the end of his arm, and over that I am going to be applying his little mittens or his little hands. So I'm starting on one side and applying it, and then I'm going to take the other and just adhere it to the other piece and kind of sandwich his wrist in between. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. He's got such a flat back because of my melting issue. But there he is. I think he's so cute. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 26.
So I have these wood ovals from the Hobby Lobby. I believe they were $2.99 for the pack of 2. I've got some fabric. I've got little Dollar Tree Christmas tree, Dollar Tree little mini present ornament things. Actually, I'm not even sure that they're ornaments. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be, but I thought they were super cute. And then I had some picks there. So I'm just taking some parchment paper and I am fashioning somewhat of a template. I wanted to make sure that I had an idea of how large that was. So I'm cutting out a little bit of a pattern, but then I folded it in half and I cut it down more because I want to create like a little rug. So I just wanted to kind of have the right shape, and I don't know. I'm sure that there are better ways of doing this than what I just did, but it was the way that I did it. So I went ahead and cut out a piece of the fabric, and then it occurred to me I probably should go ahead and prepare my wood so it could dry while I was doing other things. So I kind of ignored my fabric there for a second, sanded down any of the rough patches, and then I am using my Waverly Antique Wax with a baby wipe, and I am just going to make sure that I've got the wood piece completely stained, front, back, sides, all over. Set that aside to dry, and then I went back to my fabric. I'm just cutting out around my little pattern that I had created so that I have my little rug for the little scene that I am going to be creating. Not sure why I decided to show you so much of me cutting, but there we go. So now I am taking my green fabric. This is a little bowl that I've turned upside down because I wanted a circle. So I just took a pencil, and it was just dark enough for me to be able to see it on the green, and I cut it out, and then I'm folding my circle in half like 3 times. I'm going to trim off the ends just to make sure that they're all even so it's a really nice perfect circle, and then I'm going to cut off the tip right here. So right there, I cut off the tip so you can see there's a hole in the center, and then I'm going to clip it so we have a little tree skirt. Did you see that? So basically create a circle, you cut out the middle, and then yeah, So I pulled this ribbon out of my stash. This is a Dollar Tree ribbon, and I am just going to run this kind of like rickrack. Oh my gosh, is rickrack even still a thing? My grandmother used to use rickrack. I think my mother even used rickrack. I'm like having flashbacks to the 1970s and some of the clothing that I was dressed in. But at any rate, oh, now I'm aging myself. But I applied that to the edge of the tree skirt just to make it nice and cute. And now I am just setting my little pieces on my platform, so to speak. So I'm coming in with this pick and was cutting these little balls off, and then I realized I could slide them right off of the pokey things. So once I had them all prepared, I'm using a little bit of hot glue and I am applying them to my tree like Christmas balls. And this only takes a tiny little bit of hot glue. And you can tell I was getting too much of it. So I was kind of sharing the hot glue. I'd put it on one, rub some of it off on another, and apply both of them at the same time. So just needs a teeny tiny little bit of glue. And it worked like a charm. And I just thought that this was so adorable and really, really happy with how it was turning out. So once I went ahead and had as many balls on there that I wanted, I grabbed this other Dollar Tree ribbon that I had in my stash that I thought looked a little bit like a garland. So I added some hot glue to the tip of that, added that to my tree, kind of stuck it in there, and then I went ahead and I wrapped it around the tree or twirled the tree and held on to the garland so that it wrapped. And then, so I did it from tip to base, and then I just secured it at the base with some more hot glue. And I just glued it in a place where it wasn't noticeable. Um, I know it was kind of hard to see there where I'd glued it. I reapplied my little tree skirt. I've got my little scene going on, my little white rug, and now it's time for the presents and just getting it ready for Christmas morning. So just adding those on, gluing them down where I want them. And I just think that this is so sweet. I love this so much. It makes my heart happy. So the one final touch, I came back in and I was pulling off some more of these little, I don't even know what you would call them, little, I'm going to call them beads for lack of a better term. And I pulled off about 6 of them so that I could create a little silver star. So again, hot glue, just gluing them together one at a time, just adding them around the center bead. And you could use beads for this if you wanted to. There's no reason why you couldn't. It doesn't have to be this styrofoam glittery stuff, right? So whatever you might have in your stash, I'm sure you've got something that you could use. And then adding some hot glue to the tip of my tree and applying my little star. And this one is all wrapped up. Love it.
DIY number 27.
So we've got a couple of little gingerbread men. I'm showing you my Sunny Porch chalk paint and my Java chalk paint, which is like a chocolate brown, like a dark chocolate brown. I am sanding my little gingerbread men to get them ready, and we're going to start mixing some paint. Now, I was hoping that the yellow would get me to the color I wanted, but it didn't. I needed more orange. So I went ahead and added some of my pumpkin chalk paint until I got the color I wanted. There was quite a bit of mixing that went on here, you guys. It was not as quick as it looked. But, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. So I had tested it. It was a good color for me. So I went ahead and gave my little gingerbread men a painting. Now, the neat thing about these, and I'd picked, actually, my sister had picked these up at Michael's. The little design is etched into them so you can see that you can still see it once they're dry. So I'm using chenille stems. Oh yeah, and I got the googly eyes out of my stash. I've been dying to use these. I think I've had them for like a year and I've not had an opportunity to use them. So I pulled those out, and then I also pulled out some cute little buttons. Those are from a jar of buttons that I'd gotten from the Dollar Tree. And now I'm going to use chenille stems to outline my little gingerbread guys wherever you would normally expect there to be icing. right? When you ice and decorate your gingerbread men, I'm going to be using chenille stems. And I love the chenille stems because you can bend them any which way you want, and they're nice and fluffy, so it's easy to hide the ends. And I did find that it was easier to cut this down in little pieces rather than try to force it to go in and out and back and forth. And so you can certainly do that if you choose, but my recommendation is to cut it down into smaller pieces. I think it's just easier to manipulate and easier to get it to do what you want to do with it. So I'm just going to continue to go around his little body, getting him all handsome and decorated. Just a little bead of hot glue, just following the design that is already laid out on the little gingerbread men. And then I went ahead and added in his eyes. It's just a little bit of hot glue. And then I did the same thing with his buttons, added those in with some hot glue. Then I finished off his little face with a little red smile and some little cheeks, literally just a teeny piece of the chenille stem that I had curled around into almost like a ball and applied that as well. And then went for his little bow tie. So I'm essentially making like a figure eight shape that's got corners to it, for lack of a better term. I think that's the best way I can describe it. So you just kind of form a figure eight, wrap when you get to back to your starting point in the middle of your figure eight, wrap the tail around the middle a couple of times, and then you can clip it off. Just applied the little bow ties and they were done. I think these are so sweet.
DIY number 28.
So for this project, it's going to be quick and easy. This is a chalk couture project. I am in love. You know, the chalk couture is super simple. It's easy to do. And you know what? I honestly feel like these look store-bought when they are complete. And when there's no operator error on my part because I have, this, I think this might only be the third time I'm using it. So, I had a learning curve for myself personally because I don't know. I did make sure that I fuzzed it. That was putting it on that little green mat up top. So I had missed that step. I'd forgotten that I needed to do it. And in past projects. And so I did it this time and it worked like a charm. So there, I almost forgot again, right? So I'm going ahead, I'm fuzzing my little pieces. I'm applying them to my sign. So those little stars, I decided I was going to put on either side of the Christmas trees. You could put them over top of the Christmas trees. You could not use the stars, whatever you want. And this is the copper shimmer that I'm using for the stars themselves. And it just goes on with this little squeegee. So it's similar to stenciling, but not quite. Um, so I peeled that off, went ahead and reapplied it on the other side, did the same thing. I'm using the olive shimmer on my little Christmas trees. And then I used the shadow shimmer, which is basically a black shimmer on my Merry Christmas. And I found that a little of this went a long way, and these transfers can be used over and over again. So while they seem a little pricey at first, when you think about how many times you can actually use them, they're actually not that bad. So now, once it was all dry, I grabbed a couple of large beads, wooden beads from my stash because I want to create a little stand for this so it'll stand up on its own. I'm sorry that the angle is bad here and you can't see where I'm gluing it, but I'm basically gluing it kind of at the top of the bead and between where the bead meets the cutting board. So once it's all dry or cool, I flipped it back upside down and I'm adding some more glue underneath, and I'm going to hold it upside down so that while it's hot, the glue kind of conforms around the bead to give it extra support. And here I am like blowing on it and willing it to be cool and waving at it apparently. But I think this is so sweet. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 29.
All right, I have a whole bunch of little tiny ornaments. Some of these are from Dollar Tree, some of them are from Hobby Lobby. I had them all in my stash, and yeah, this is going to be one of those projects where it's do as I say, not as I do, because I was struggling with how to do this at first, and it took some figuring out in the beginning. I have a little wood round there. I believe that's from Dollar Tree. I think I had like a pack of six of them, and I'm not sure what it was from. I just know it's a circular wood piece, but I'm going to use it as my base. Now, I was sectioning these off into little groupings that were going to be receding, right? So I'm going to be creating a tapered Christmas tree. And I thought, well, maybe I can try and tie them together, you know, it wasn't working. I know it doesn't look that bad from this angle, maybe, but from the front, it just wasn't working. It was like a garbled mess. So, garbled mess, whatever that word is. So I went ahead and started to glue them to the little base, and that ended up working a little bit better for me. And then I started in on my second layer, and I quickly realized that I really needed something in between the layers. So I went into my stash and I pulled out this, I want to say beaded garland or pip berries. I'm not sure what you want to call this, but berry garland, I think. Anyway, I took a couple of rounds of the berry garland and I was using that in between the layers. Now, the other thing that I was thinking might work really well if you have decreasing sizes of wood rounds, that could be really pretty too in between your layers of the ornaments. But the little garlands, the wire garlands, provided just enough support for me between the layers that it worked out just fine. So I had glued the little garland down, and I did that with each new layer. Glued that down, and then added in my next layer of little ornaments. So once I got to the top, I had those three there, and then I did not actually use a garland for that last one. All I had to do was take the little cap off of it, flip it upside down, and tuck its little um, stem inside. And then for the finishing touch, I used one of these little Dollar Tree glittery stars that I think it came in like a pack of six. And I'm very happy.
DIY number 30.
All right, so I have some jingle bells. I've got my jute cord twine and a whole bunch of fabric. Turned out that I didn't need the jute cord twine because I didn't realize that that was actually a garland of bells, but we'll get to that in a minute. For now, I am just ripping my fabric to pieces. So if you just clip the end and pull and tear, you can have really straight lines with your fabric. So it's just a neat little trick, and it makes your little edges nice and frayed and a little bit more rustic if you like that look. So here I am opening up my bells and discovering, oh, it's a garland. I don't need the twine. I can just use the garland. So I went ahead and started tying on my fabric strips to the bell garland, and I was alternating the colors. I had a white, the buffalo check white and black, and then the hunter green. At first, I was just putting a single strip of fabric in between the bells, and then I felt like it was looking a little bit sparse. So I did eventually go back and add in one of each color between the bells. So there were then three strips of fabric. You can see here I'm already doing it between the bells, and that was a much better look, in my opinion. So I just continue to work that around, and I just think this is so easy, so cute, something anybody can do, and you can really make a statement with it. I love it. Let me know what you think. DIY number 31. So this is some leftover scrap wood from some kitties that I made a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't see that video, I will leave a link in my description box. I'm showing you the paint colors I've used here. It was plaster, oatmeal, and crimson. Painted my little houses. Now I'm going to do the roofs black. Once I have that all done and they're nice and dry, I'm grabbing my Arteza paint marker. This is also in black. Now look how cute those are just like that. Part of me wishes I'd kind of just left them and maybe decorated them with greenery. I, yeah, I kind of had a vision in my head and it went a little awry somewhere. But I decided I was coming in and I was going to just create some detail on all of these houses. You'll have to let me know what you would have done with these. Would you have come in and done what I'm doing here? Because for me, the jury is kind of out on this. I'm not sure. Not sure that this is my best work, but let me know what you think. So I'm gonna keep skipping through some of these steps here so you can see what I did, but not have to sit through watching everything that I'm doing. So I'm putting some lights in the windows for all these little houses. I wanted them each to have their own little character. So this little guy is getting a wreath on the door. I've got some garland going in here. So these are all my Arteza paint markers that I'm using and just layering on the color as I go. So I'm coming in with some little red berries on the garland. And then, yeah, little hanging wreaths in the windows with little red bows on them. It's a little bit hard to see here, the detail, because as I try to zoom in with my camera, for whatever reason, it gets a little bit blurry, so I apologize for that. But adding some little Christmas lights to this house, little white lights all around the windows and the roof line. But what would you have done with these? I really do want to know. So once I had all of those little details done, I came in with my glue gun and I am giving a generous dollop of glue on the top, and I'm using my artificial snow on the hot glue. And I'm going to do that at the point, the peak of each roof, and then I'm doing it along the edges of the roof where we tend to sometimes see the snow gather as it slides down off the roof. So I'm doing that for all three of the houses. I do have them set on parchment paper to catch all of the extra snow so I can put it back in my little bag. And I'm just shaking all of the extra, once the hot glue is dry, shaking that off of the tops of my little houses. And then I just went ahead and put that back in the bag. So now I'm coming in on the front side of the houses, and again I am giving it a little bit of snow. I'm being generous with the amount of the hot glue as well as with the snow. And that's pretty much it. So I guess they're kind of cute and sweet. But let me know what you think. Here I'm just showing you how I was able to fold up the parchment paper and slide that snow right back into my bag for future use. And that's it. And here they are. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the projects. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know which one you liked the most. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that and come back and visit with me again sometime soon. Until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you again so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.